have unlocked the eternal link to internal source. The key of imagination, your admission, access to the enlightened dimension. A gateway at the junction of darkness and light. The place at which the chaos of our conditioned frame of mind give way to a life in constant flux, only to be mastered through vigilant discipline. Peaceful times may come, testing times may go. This is the Ebb and Flow.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Ebb and Flow podcast. I'm your host, Eben Britton. It's great to be with you guys again. I hope you're staying safe and staying sane in this crazy time we find ourselves in. I've got a hell of a guest lined up for you today. A guy I've been following for a little while now. He's got some fascinating information and knowledge to share with you. His name is Dr. Shawn Baker. He is the carnivore diet expert. He's the CEO of MeatRx.com. We'll have all that stuff for you later on in the show notes. But Shawn, it's great to have you, my brother. Thank you for taking the time.
Evan, man, thanks for having me. I look forward to the discussion. I'm sure it'll be interesting.
Absolutely, man. So, I came across your story first on Rogan's podcast, and I thought it was fascinating. It sort of blew my mind that there was this whole, we've all heard of the vegan craze, and, people have been preaching the health benefits of veganism for, as long as I think we can all remember. So the idea that people can sustain themselves, not only sustain themselves, but actually cure themselves of all sorts of issues, whether that's mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, or autoimmune disorders, you name it, they're being affected in a very positive way by switching to this all meat diet. And that just blew my mind, and I wanted to learn more. So I'd love it if you could just sort of give my audience, my listeners, a little overview of, your background and how you came to this place, because it's really your way of life and your way of being at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm like I said, I'm a medical doctor. I was an orthopedic surgeon. I practiced for about 20 years. I've been an athlete my whole life, and I didn't play in the NFL, but I played high level rugby against some of the top guys in the world. I went through powerlifting. I went through strongman competitions. I've been at national levels and all these and set records. Throughout the years. As an athlete, I got into Highland Games, won a world championship with that. Got into rowing, this concept too, and set several world records. And so I've been a really just athlete life, and it's been part of who I am. And I look for performance. And I didn't really discover nutrition, the essentiality role of nutrition in not only performance, but also in health, real specifically until I was in my early 40s. I'm in my mid 50s now. And so I kind of made this journey, of discovering nutrition and the impact on my own health. And then I started applying to my patients as a surgeon, and then suddenly seeing that, wow, these people that were on the schedule for surgery, now they don't even need surgery because their symptoms went away, which was pretty enlightening for me and pretty revolutionary. And, it made me pretty happy to see that. And so as I kind of transitioned more towards the lifestyle stuff, it wasn't really aligned well with, a lot of the hospitals, because they rely on these procedures to pay the bills. And so there's not really a good financial incentive for doing this, but nonetheless, it's the right thing to do. And so nutrition does make a huge, huge difference in our health, as many of us are discovering, at least ones that care about their health. Now, my journey into this sort of carnivore or meat-based diet wasn't something I just kind of capriciously said, I'm just going to try this. No, I had gone through this 10-year journey of trying different diets, seeing how it affected my health, body performance, mental outlook, mood, just general health. And I got to where I went from a low fat, high vegetable, salad, lean meat, a little bit of lean meat diet, lost weight. I was, like you, at one point I was about 305, when I was doing the strongman stuff in the Highland Games. It's just one of those sports you got to be, you can't be in the NFL and be 150 work. You got to be a certain size. So you got to
absolutely
for your job. And so I was doing that. And then when I decided I didn't want to do that anymore, I was like, it's time to to kind of get leaner. And so I dropped like 50 pounds in 3 months. It wasn't hard. I mean, it was just a big caloric deficit and a lot of exercise. I mean, it's 3 times a day, jumping rope, lifting, jumping rope, 3 times a day while working as a surgeon, just kind of doing a lot of work. And I did that, but I found it wasn't sustainable. I mean, I couldn't just constantly exercise and not eat enough. I mean, this is what I'm actually doing. And I was pretty grouchy and grumpy, and the nurses didn't like me. They liked the fat Dr. Baker better. The big Dr. Baker, the more filled out guy. And so I quickly realized that wasn't sustainable. So I went away from that really low fat sort of approach to something that I could sustain. That was more of a Paleolithic type of diet, include a little more animal products, animal fats. I went from there to kind of a general low carb diet. I started reading books and reading studies and experimenting and really taking an interest in this for about almost a decade now. And then I got into a ketogenic diet for a while, and then I started looking at these people that were doing this crazy all meat diet. They called it a zero carb diet, and I started looking back into the historical stuff. Guys like Vince Caranda and some of the other bodybuilders that used steak and egg diets and obtain really good athletic results. And this is pre-steroid era in a lot of cases, and they're still putting a pretty good body composition. And even before that, there's history of this diet being used for years. I'm certainly not the first person to advocate for this. It's been hundreds of years people have been talking about this. So I, right before I turned 50 years of age, I was, starting to get a little bit of a follow on social media. Said, hey, I'm going to do a meat-based diet, all meat for 30 days. And it was kind of a joke. I mean, it was kind of, on social media, it's kind of like, hey, we're just going to try it, see what happens. And I really felt good. I mean, I was like, the little aches and pains I had accumulated from years as being an athlete kind of went away. And I was like, that's kind of curious. I kind of expected at 50, I was kind of like, this is my existence. I'm going to have these aches and pains. And when they went away, it was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And then 30 days was up, and I said, well, that was a fun experiment. And then I went back, I added these other foods, and then all of a sudden these aches and pains came back. I'm like, well, that's not good. So I went back to the meat-only diet, and I continued to do it. 2 months turned into 6 months. And at that time, I was, starting to do this repetitive concept 2 rowing. And while I was on a full carnivore diet, I ended up breaking, I ended up with 6 American records and 3 world records, well, without any, just on a purely meat-based diet. And then at that time, we got, more and more people interested in it. We got hundreds of people to try it. They were getting similar results to me. And now here I am, over 3.5 years later, still on this kind of meat-based diet and still, doing well. I mean, I'm still performing extremely high level for I don't know if you see what I do.
Yeah, I do, man.
And I'm still getting after it pretty good.
Fucking A, dude. 53. I mean, you're fucking throwing that 200-pound med ball around like it's nothing, dude.
Well, it's not nothing, but it's hard work. But it's
absolutely.
The 150 is easy now. The 150, I just did the 150 for 20 reps to a 16-inch box in like a minute 40. So
love that.
That's good. But that's good work, man. For anybody who's never done that stuff, that's fun stuff. It's fun and hard work, and it's good.
Absolutely, man. And I have to say that following your journey for the last few years, man, you look like you're leaner, you look younger.
Yeah.
You look like you're getting into better shape as the years go on.
Yeah. I mean, I think honestly, I'm probably, probably in the best shape of my life right now at 53. I mean, and this is coming from doing athletics my whole life. And I always, just from a body composition standpoint, this is the leanest I've ever been. Probably, there might have been one other time when I was this lean, but this is probably as lean as I've ever been. And performance-wise, I feel great. I mean, I literally get up every day and train hard, and I'm not sore. I have excellent recovery. I mean, I'm like, like I put up every day. I'm doing really taxing stuff. And, like I said, I certainly believe in recovery, but recovery is what it needs to be. And if I need to take a day off, I'll take a day off. But most days I wake up and I said, yeah, I feel great. Let's go attack it again. And it's great. I know you have a background in the NFL, and there's a guy that I just saw. I don't know if you guys got him, Danny Sorensen. He's
of course.
Yeah, so he's on a carnivore diet now. He's just announced after the Super Bowl he went on carnivore, and he feels great. So we'll see how he performs this year. I've seen a number of there's a guy named Matt Spack, who is another guy who's also ex-NFL, who's on it now, and he says he wished he would have discovered this while he was
playing.
Because I will tell you, the unique thing that I found, recovery is tremendous.
Yeah.
You just feel good. And when as performance, when you get beat up day in and day out, man, some days you don't want to train. Some days you don't want, you're just limited by the way you feel.
Absolutely.
The NFL, everybody gets injured to some degree. I mean, you
Yeah,
can't be in the NFL and not have some kind of nagging injury. I mean, if you do,
definitely.
you're pretty lucky.
Yeah. No, every guy, every season, every single guy is dealing with some injury that's lingering, whether it's a bum ankle, a torn muscle, etc. Like every guy has something going on. So I'm curious about, for my listeners, I'd love for you to talk about, some of the results that people have seen, and why. I mean, this is fascinating. This isn't just a bunch of nut jobs going out there and experimenting with just eating meat. There's a lot of science and experience that's going into the way this is changing people's lives for the better.
Yeah, so there are, and we can talk about the theoretical mechanisms and some of the data that we have on this. And
Absolutely.
we are right now in the middle of a Harvard study with David Ludwig and Belinda Lennertz as a principal investigator, being done, data collector right now. So this is going. There's about 3,000 people that have entered the study, so we have some good science going in. And then there's science going back hundreds of years on this diet, but what I see is, first of all, we see the common things. A lot of people have arthritis. A lot of people have, unfortunately, mental health issues, mood disorders. A lot of people have digestive problems. And we see those things being common as they are, commonly being fixed by appropriate diet. Diet has a role in just about every chronic disease out there. I think that's a fair statement to say. And so when we look at, what is a meat-based diet? Well, we know that humans have been eating meat for roughly 3 million years. I mean, if we talk about human beings, humans are not necessarily just Homo sapiens. Humans are Neanderthal, Homo erectus, Homo habilis, and so on and so forth. So humans have inhabited the earth, if you believe in an evolutionary model, for almost 3 million years. And we've been eating meat that entire time. So that is part of our natural diet. And in some cases, we ate it, a lot of it going back, particularly as we migrated throughout the world. We couldn't have depended upon a plant food source of diet to get through from Africa to Europe, to Asia, across the Bering Strait, North America, South America. There had to have been, you couldn't say this plant was essential because it doesn't grow everywhere. It doesn't grow in Austin. So what's available all the time year round is some kind of animal, whether it's a deer or a seal or whatever. We eat everything, right? So I mean, that's kind of the plausibility of this stuff. And so what happens is, and we've known, I mean, there are populations, there are people like the Sami tribe in northern Finland that exist on reindeer, and they live longer than the other people in Finland. So they have longer life, better health than the people that are eating the Western diet in Finland. And we've got a number of examples historically. But what we see is, when you're on a meat-based diet, one thing's happening. You're not eating junk food, first of all.
Right.
I don't care if you believe in a plant-based diet, that's fine. Everybody that promotes it is a whole food plant-based diet, limit the seed oils, right? This is kind of the latest iteration of the plant-based diet. So basically you're cutting out junk food. You're doing the same thing on a meat-based diet. Now the difference is, when we look at biochemically what human beings require, and this is not controversial, human beings require essential amino acids, essential fats, vitamins and minerals. All of that can be obtained from a meat-based diet. Some people argue about vitamin C. If you want to get plenty of vitamin C on a meat-based diet, you can eat things like liver and other organ meats. Although the vitamin C requirements seem to change, if you're not taking as much glucose. There's a lot of evidence to support that. There is, when we look at what is going on besides eliminating junk food, meat is highly, highly bioavailable. We are well adapted. The people that are plant-based advocates are saying meat sits there and rots in your colon. There's nothing further from the truth than that. There's no data that supports that. Our meat is absorbed within our small intestine before it ever even gets into our colon. I mean, we have a number of ileostomy patients. These are patients that have lost their colon, and now they have to go into a bag. And we see what comes out. And when they eat meat, nothing enters the bag. I mean, it's a tiny amount of liquid.
Interesting.
So you don't have meat. Think about it. Last time you go to the toilet, you see corn in your stool, but you don't see pieces of meat. I mean,
or like leafy green.
Yeah, I mean, you don't see pieces of meat in your stool. And if you did, that's a medical emergency. But it doesn't rot. It doesn't sit in there. So it's well absorbed. It's higher bioavailability. It's better quality nutrition. And that's what we're seeing is, there's a group of researchers in Europe that are looking at gut permeability, and we see that gut permeability seems to be associated with autoimmune diseases, mental health diseases, even asthma, which was not considered an autoimmune disease. All of these things seem to take origin in the gut and the gut permeability. The microbiome may have a role in there, but ultimately it's, gut health, gut permeability leading these things. And we see a meat-based diet, when they actually test for gut permeability, they see that becomes normal on a meat-based diet. Whereas a diet that contains medications, sweeteners, seed oils, certain other dairy products, certain vegetables and things like that can cause disruptions in gut permeability for some people. That seems to, when you have permeability across that membrane, and you have permeability across other membranes in the body, including the blood-brain barrier, that may be leading to sort of inflammation in the brain itself, which may be contributing to some of the mental health problems. And then additionally, we see on a meat-based diet, because you're not consuming glucose, you're not taking any of the carbohydrates. So the glucose levels are they're manufactured by the liver through something called gluconeogenesis, which can occur from protein or fats.
Right.
And that ends up usually resulting in very steady glucose, because your body will make what it needs, and you don't have these high fluctuations in glucose. And without this fluctuating glucose, we often see mood is stabilized, because people are, they've got this constant supply of energy to their brain. They don't have these ups and downs in energy getting to the brain, and then their mood reflects it. So generally, most people on this diet, you sort of got this baseline, kind of chilled out and mildly happy. I mean, this is kind of like, you're just kind of like, you're doing well, and you avoid those things. So I've seen autoimmune disease. It's rare for me to think about a relatively common disease that has not gotten better with this diet, whether it's diabetes, hypertension, even cardiovascular disease. We see autoimmune symptoms, rheumatoid arthritis, psoriasis, eczema, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, irritable bowel syndrome, depression, anxiety, even PTSD. All of these things seem to respond and get better, at least to some degree, with this diet for most people.
That's amazing. So what is sort of the working theory, or the science around why meat by itself is so beneficial rather than in combination or in concert with other foods, whether plants or starches, etc.?
Yeah. So I think one is quality. I think, just from a qualitative standpoint and an efficiency standpoint, if we look at all the animals that have ever existed on planet Earth, going back 800 million years when the first multicellular organisms started to evolve, the strategy of 90% of all those animals that have ever existed has been a carnivorous strategy. That is to say, they eat other animals to build animal cells, animal structure. It's just more efficient. It's a very efficient way to do business. If you're building a brick house, you need bricks. You don't need straw. You need what you need, and if you don't have to convert stuff. And this is what happens. And so the herbivore and even the omnivorous strategy has been it's been a later development, and it tends to be less efficient. The grasslands evolved about 100 million years ago, and this is when we started seeing the ruminant animals, and obviously the animals that ate those, the carnivore predators are out there. But the theory really is that, one is it's efficiency of nutrition. It is, there is just much better bioavailability, which I alluded to earlier. I mean, we see that. So we can look at the RDA. This is interesting. The RDA is starting to get this, and the RDA was developed, basically World War II. They're trying to figure out what to feed soldiers. So they did, they looked at population studies, and they said, well, we know that when people eat this much of this nutrient, they don't get, disease X, whether it's scurvy, beriberi, pellagra, all these different nutrition deficiency diseases. And that's how a lot of it was done. They had some intervention stuff where they would do that, and they would test a few people. But generally, the background diet for that was a standard, carbohydrate and grain-based diet. What Americans have been eating for, at least 100 years now.
Yeah.
And so that was the origins of the RDA. And so what we're seeing now is that, we're seeing that things like zinc. So zinc, we know if you eat a lot of phytic acid, it competes with the absorption of zinc. And this comes from things like beans and legumes and grains and things like that. And so now the RDA will say that if you eat 1,000 milligrams of phytic acid, you need to double your zinc intake. If If you eat 2,000 milligrams of fats, you need to triple your zinc intake
Mm.
because of the absorption problems. And so we're seeing that meat doesn't have anything that limits absorption. You know, we hear about polyphenols. So polyphenols are great. They stimulate the immune system. They provide something called hormesis, which is considered, you know, like low level of stress, and your body just kind of builds this defense mechanisms. And but what we don't talk about is like polyphenols, they inhibit the absorption of essential fats and essential amino acids. And so it's like, well, if we're eating these polyphenols and we're limiting our absorption of protein and fats, is that a net good thing or a bad thing? We don't know. Much of nutrition, this is a problem with nutrition research in general. It is dependent upon observational studies, which are just very, very weak. They're very poor science. They can't show what they think it shows. I mean, when they try to extrapolate to say, you know, I'm going to eat this type of diet in hopes that I'm not going to get heart disease in 20 years or cancer in 30 or 40 years, there's no evidence. I mean, the evidence that would suggest that is so incredibly weak. And that's why, you know, in 2019, the Nutrex organization, that was, you know, one of the senior research authors is a guy named Gordon Guyatt. Gordon Guyatt invented the term evidence-based medicine. He literally in 1991 wrote a paper saying this is what evidence-based medicine is. He coined that phrase. He's been studying evidence for 30 some years. I mean, he's like probably one of the most credible guys in the world about evaluating evidence. And part of that Nutrex study in 2019 said red meat does not cause cancer. It does not cause heart disease. It does not cause any disease, or the only evidence that would support that is extremely, extremely weak. And so we have to realize our nutrition science is just problematic to start with. But
Is it, and you know, I feel like I know the answer to this, but is it because it's the science around food in our country has been compromised by the people who are funding it?
I mean, certainly that's there. I mean, you know, like I said, I don't want to paint all researchers as biased and, you know, compromised, but I mean, there is certainly some funding. What happens is, you know, if you're a researcher and you're doing the thing and you do something and you do a research project that supports the interest of a company, that company's going to give you more money to fund the next study. So it's not necessarily that these researchers are saying, I'm going to go out in order to support Coca-Cola. But Coca-Cola might say, hey, look, he's doing some research to support ourselves. Let's kick another $500,000 into his research fund for this year. And so we see that influence. And we do know that, you know, going back in the 1960s, guys like Fred Stair at Harvard was taking money from the sugar lobby or the sugar industry to sort of demonize fat. So there is some compromise in that. That clearly has existed. And it's really hard to do good nutritional research. It really, really is. I think there's some good researchers out there. But I think if we focus on, you know, we have such a sick population, you know, we're in the United States. We are one of the most resource, you know, blessed countries in the world. We have so much money. We have so much resource. We have so much access to food and nutrition.
Yeah.
And we have and we spend $3.5 trillion a year in healthcare. And we have some of the worst population health metrics, you know, on any westernized country on the planet. And that's a huge problem. And so I think that, you know, we have to realize that we have a lot of sick people. You know, unfortunately, you know, there's people that have figured out they're not sick anymore. But the majority of the population, you know, there's recent studies show that 88% of us are metabolically unhealthy. So we have a huge problem with these people. And I think the solution is not to say, let's not worry about what they're going to die of in 30 years, because we don't really know. We don't have the data that shows, at least with regard to exercise. But let's take these people that are sick today. Maybe they're obese, maybe they're diabetic, maybe they have hypertension, immunities, you know, depression, whatever, and make those things no longer true for that person. Take them from obese to non-obese. Take them from diabetic to non-diabetic. And if we just focus on that and make that our priority, not lowering their cholesterol so they don't get heart disease in 30 years, then I think we have a huge, you know, we can really impact lives and really prevent a lot of unnecessary suffering and a lot of unnecessary waste of resources, you know, financial and you know, people's resources otherwise.
Yeah, I love that approach and that mentality. I think it's I mean, I don't know. I think we're probably the sickest and unhealthiest we've ever been in America.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. I mean, we're only getting sicker. The obesity the obesity crisis is only, you know, getting worse and going worse, and, you know, dumping technology into it and you know, multi-million-dollar Band-Aids on is not the answer. And, it's a political year. He's fighting about, well, right now they're fighting about the coronavirus, but they're fighting about how do we fund this healthcare system? What's the best way? Do we go to single payer? And my answer is, why are you funding? I mean, this is literally like funding the Titanic as it's about to hit the iceberg. It's like, you're in there arguing about the deck chairs, rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. We're like, get on another damn ship, guys. We got to just change the way we do business, or we're just gonna bankrupt the country. It's healthy. This is another thing when we talk about the environment. Because people are concerned about meat in the environment. So
right.
It's really unfounded when we look at the data. I mean, we can see what's happening as we're not driving our cars or flying planes. Pollution's going away. The cows are still there. They're still belching and farting, and everything's clearing up. So I think we're finding that out, and there's more nuance to that. And there's people talk about methane, but there's a long lot of information there. But sick human beings contributing to a healthcare system. Our healthcare system provides something like 10% of our greenhouse gases. All of agriculture only provides 9%, and all of animal agriculture is only 4%, and cows are only 2%. This is based on U.S. EPA data. So if we want to say what's not sustainable for the environment, it's sick people. We've got to have less sick people. If you want to fix the healthcare system, stop making so many damn sick people. That's where it starts. And it starts with food and lifestyle and nutrition.
Amen.
And changing our priorities. And if we don't do that in a major aggressive way and not give lip service, because in medicine, medical school prevention is just lip service. It's like, a little bit of this. It's like fluff. It's like it doesn't have any teeth to it. And I think if we change our policies, maybe it's grassroots, maybe enough people wake up, maybe social media will influence enough people. It's just, it's hard to tell people to exercise and eat right and have them actually do it. And it's hard to make a policy like that. Japan has stuff like that in place, where if you're obese, you suffer some consequence. You might have a tax issue, or your employer gives you problems. So it's a different mentality. And I don't know that.
Interesting.
There's a lot of restrictions on personal liberties. And some people say, hey, it's my right to be fat and out of shape and drink beer and lay on the couch and do drugs. That's my right. Whatever. You can't take that away from me. And I understand this freedom type of stuff, but at the same point, this coronavirus, where we've locked people in homes, we've taken away in order to protect a small minority of people that are going to get sick, that are metabolically unhealthy to start with, most likely. We're willing to take these drastic measures, mobilize the military, lock down the country, shut businesses for that. But at the same time, if somebody were to suggest, hey, maybe we shouldn't produce so much crap food.
Yeah.
We should, that's, oh, no, I want to eat my pizza and I want to eat my sugary sweets as much as I want. I want to eat dessert 24 hours a day, 7 days a week if I can.
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely, man. Amen to that. It's fascinating. As someone, I'm curious about this. As a guy, orthopedic surgeon, someone who has worked in the Western medical establishment, food is not something that's, you're not educated on food and nutrition through medical school, are you?
No, not at all. I mean, you learn the basics about what vitamin deficiencies lead to what diseases. And, basically it's, people that are overweight or malnourished don't heal as well. And they have higher rates for infection rates, and they have, healing complications and stuff like that. But there's if I look up like carpal tunnel syndrome and I say, what's the treatment for carpal tunnel syndrome? Well, it's activity modification, it's braces. Sometimes we'll do injections, and none of that stuff we can do a little carpal tunnel release surgical procedure. That is the paradigm. We see it over and over. Right. Knee arthritis, the same thing. It's, it's lose weight. It's physical therapy. It's medications. It's injections. It's arthroscopies, and then finally, if none of that stuff works, you end up with a knee replacement. But nowhere in there is it saying this diet may impact this. If you read all the reviews in orthopedic, and I read these things and I'm looking at, nowhere does it suggest that a particular diet or implementing a diet could have any role, even though there's scientific literature out there now that shows that, low carbohydrate diets seem to impact knee pain and make it better. There's evidence that high insulin affects the synovial cells that line the joint, which lead to inflammatory cytokines that accelerate arthritis. And so
Absolutely.
we have that literature out there, but it's not really taught to surgeons. As an orthopedic surgeon recommending post-fracture care. I mean, we learn a little bit about calcium. Increase your calcium intake to 1,500 milligrams a day or something like that. Maybe add some vitamin D, but really it's protein. I had to learn that afterwards. It's like, protein is what, bones are made out of about 40 to 50% protein. There's a collagen backbone on which these minerals are deposited, but we don't even talk about eating enough protein. I mean, this is one of the shames. I mean, you as an athlete probably appreciate protein, but I mean, just for general health, we have an RDA that is abysmally low in protein. It is like just enough to not die. It's like, this is a scarce minimum you can have to just, not fall apart, and it doesn't help you thrive. We should be thriving.
And the RDA is your recommended daily allowance?
Correct.
Yes. And so, I think that's so fascinating. I guess as an athlete, I've always had such a intuitive relationship with what I'm putting into my body and how it makes me feel. And that has, crossed all boundaries into the food that I eat, and I know that in the past, man, I have felt an experience for myself when I eat something that doesn't agree with my biochemistry, whether that's a high starchy thing or a high sugar thing. I wake up the next day and I fucking feel it, whether it's aching knees, bad hips, my back hurts, I've got a fucking headache, and thankfully just on my journey, I've been able to recognize that, and I think so many people are going around maybe because of this paradigm that a lot of people, most Americans, are functioning under, which is sort of this Western medical paradigm of like, if something hurts, there's a pill for it, there's an injection for it, if not, you can have surgery, etc. And I think your point of, let's get back to the basics of how important nutrition and exercise are to your overall well-being. So Shawn, I know you got only about an hour here, and we're halfway in. I'd love for you to talk about, if someone's out there and they're interested in, taking this step and trying the carnivore diet, how does somebody go about that? What are your practices? Like, what's a daily routine for you? Like for me, I'm a big fan of intermittent fasting. I know that you do a lot of that as well. And I'm curious, what does a day of a carnivore diet look like?
Yeah. So first of all, what I'd say, just to your earlier point, and then I'll get into this, we have, this perception of, as we get older, and, you spending time in the NFL, getting beat up, even at a relatively young age, you have this feedback that, when I eat poorly, I get sore. And a lot of people, they kind of think that is normal, and they take it as normal aging. It's like, well, I'm 40, my back's supposed to hurt a little bit, I'm supposed to have a little bit of a gut, you've got the quote unquote dad bod that we're accepting now.
Fuck that, dude.
No, exactly. And it's not, it is common, but it is not normal. It is not normal to feel aches and pains and be sore and, be impotent and, tired and depressed as you get older. Those are not normal things. I don't care how old you are. You shouldn't expect that. You should expect to thrive, to function, perform into your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. It doesn't matter. I mean, this is my belief. I think, you live a full, robust, functional life. You drop dead at 90 or whatever rapidly. You don't spend 40 years decaying. That's awful. And then a lot of people, they don't realize that until they change their lifestyle, and they think it's normal because everyone around them experiences a normal thing. I thought, for me, my digestion, I would have this, kind of just a little bit of wonky digestion. I thought, that's just kind of normal digestion, until I fixed my diet and I was like, wow, that wasn't normal for me. Or the tendonitis I had for 10 years. As an orthopedic surgeon, I was dealing with right quad tendonitis, and it would never go away. And I'd stretch and do eccentric exercises and, all the things that I know as a surgeon that tend to maybe help this. But it wasn't until I changed my diet that tendonitis went completely completely away, and it hasn't come back. And it was like, wow, that's really interesting. The diet plays a role in that. And the patients that I thought were kind of odd when they tell me that eating, whatever gluten affected their joints, I always kind of wrote them off as kind of wacky. But then I realized that, hey man, there's something to this stuff. But to your point about starting the diet. So first of all, we've got this company called meatrx.com. It's probably the largest resource on the planet for everything about this diet. It has hundreds and hundreds of success stories. It has support meetings, support groups. It has, coaching if you need that, really inexpensive. We kept the price down super low so more people can access to it. It has 8,000 research articles plus on health, all the things like high protein diets, how it affects the kidneys and cardiovascular disease. So we create all this giant research stuff. We have research on the environment, how meat impacts the environment. We have recipes, we have on and on stuff. We have a fasting part if people like to do the fasting, intermittent fasting or an extended fasting. So that's where I start. But my general philosophy for people, depending on why they're doing it. Now, most people, not every person needs to be on a carnivore diet to be healthy. I think there's plenty of room for healthy diets that don't involve that. But for some people, when we assume that nutrition plays a role in a problem, whether it's mental health disease or physical health disease, and I think it does in many cases, then it becomes, well, how do I figure that out? Well, if I'm eating, 35 different foods or 100 foods, it's really challenging. It's really challenging to isolate which one is doing it. It's like playing the game of Clue where you got, 25 characters instead of 8. But now when you go to a meat-based diet and you go to, you can use it as an elimination style diet. And you get there and you're only eating basically one or two things basically, and it becomes really easy to see what affects you. But what I tell people when they start, most people have this really maladaptive relationship with food. They don't eat because they're for nutrition purposes. And it's not that you shouldn't enjoy your food. I damn sure I haven't eaten yet today. It's 3:00 in the afternoon, or almost 3:00, and I've got a couple pounds of sirloin roast I'm gonna eat, and some things. And I'm going to enjoy the hell out of that thing. It's going to be great. It's going to be delicious. I might have some flounder with it. I'll cook it up in a pan with a little ghee and a little seasoning on there. It's going to be a great meal. I'm going to enjoy every aspect of it. But there are a lot of people that eat, because they're bored, because they're stressed out, because it's whatever, new time to eat, or because their friends eating, or because their grandma pressured them to eat, or whatever. I mean, there's all these reasons that are not for nutrition.
Food is a drug.
And there's a lot of foods we eat that are, we're living in an environment. So there's crap food everywhere. I mean, most of the supermarket, all this stuff is processed garbage. Everywhere you go to the doctor's office, they got candy bars, or they got suckers or little pieces of candy. You go anywhere, the vet, you go to the gas station, it's everywhere. It's never going away. You're not going to change the environment. I mean, it's not like you're going to live in a world where there's only whole food that you can eat. There's always going to be the crap there.
Yeah.
So you have to change your relationship with that food. And I find for people adopting a carnivore diet, I tell them in the beginning, eat like it's your damn job. How much do I need to eat? Eat enough so you don't want a damn cupcake or a piece of cake or whatever. That's how much you eat. You just eat enough so that you're satiated. You don't want these, you get over these cravings. And about somewhere around, 6 weeks to maybe 2-3 months in, people all of a sudden, they kind of say, hey, I really don't, I could take it or leave it. I don't really need that stuff. I mean, it's not that you can never have a piece of cake again in your life, but you have this sort of ability to pass it. It's very liberating. You can say, I don't need that. So now you've got this, it's almost like a superpower. I can walk through, I can be hungry, and there's all this cookies and cake and all this stuff that I used to love before, and I don't need to eat it. And I can wait 2 hours until I can go cook a steak, or have steak and eggs, or bacon and eggs, or whatever I'm eating on my diet. And that becomes very powerful. So you get to that stage where you eat enough and you don't worry about weight. And then, after you reach that changing your relationship with food, then you can sort of say, well, are my goals to get really lean? Like, if you want to, like, if you're a guy and you want to get to where you have a 6-pack, then you can change things up. But I mean, in the beginning, it's really just about, making sure you have good nutrition. A lot of people, even if they're obese, they are malnourished. I mean, obesity is a malnourishment disease. It's not undernourishment, but it's malnourishment. And basically what it means is, in many cases, you've had plenty of calories. I mean, you've got an abundance of calories. You just don't have nutrition. You may be lacking protein. You may be lacking vitamins, minerals, micronutrients, because your diet is, like I said, you eat these Lay's potato chips, and they say you can't just eat one, or Pringles, or whatever it is, and you can't. I mean, you're a big guy in the NFL, and I did this too. I mean, it was like, I'm going to eat a little thing of Ben and Jerry's, and that's like, well, shit, that's warm up. I'll eat 3 of these or 4.
Yeah.
Crush it.
Yeah.
But, when you're that big, you're just eating like a friggin' animal. I mean,
Yeah.
you just can't. It's like I can still put down 4 or 5 pounds of food in one setting if I need to. And it's just you've got this ability to just crush this food, and
Absolutely.
once you get started on that stuff, it's like, man. It's like, it's hard to eat one bite of that stuff. It really is. And the food manufacturers know that. That's why they're designing it.
Right.
It's a profit-making thing. The food industry is not there for your health.
Yeah.
They're there for profits. And, and that's fine. They're businesses. I mean, it's capitalism. It's a free society. But do you participate in that? It's up to you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So the key points are eat until you're full when you're starting on the carnivore diet.
Yeah.
So if you're hungry and you're taking this step, eat as much steak or meat.
Yeah, and variety is the other thing. I tell people, like there's people that, will sit there and they'll eat like a bowl of ground beef with no seasoning. I'm like, that's stupid. I mean, that's not gonna be sustainable. Do some variety. I mean, if you need to eat, bacon and eggs and a little bit of dairy and pork chops and steaks and fish and shrimp and mussels and scallops and, whatever, and deer and lamb and venison and spices and seasonings, do that in the beginning because it'll help you adapt and transition to it. You don't count calories, you don't count macronutrients, you count how much enjoyment you get out of your meal. Those are kind of meals you enjoy. Do that for a few months. Don't worry about if you get fat or get skinny or lean or whatever. Don't worry about that stuff. And then you start to taper off things. You say, well, maybe that dairy, maybe that cheese is not the best idea for me. Maybe some of those spices I'm reacting to, maybe that cayenne pepper is messing my guts up a little. You kind of taper in, and then you get to a point 2 months in, you're like, I'm just going to go beef and water for beef, water, and salt. A lot of people do that. And then they solve issues. And again, it's where you're at. If you're like a normal, healthy dude or female, and you're like, I don't really have any health issues, but I'm just trying it, you can probably keep the variety in there. If you're like, I've got terrible gut issues, I've got Crohn's disease, I've got autoimmune disease, I've got PTSD, severe anxiety, maybe you have to drop everything and you have to really narrow it down, and then you can add back in. And I'm, like I said, when I define a carnivore diet, when I go on lectures, I say carnivore diet is a diet that focuses on, highly nutritious animal foods, and then plant foods are either limited or eliminated as necessary, with the goal being health. And I think this is the point. It's not dogmatic. And there's people that will approach that, I really want to be a carnivore. And I'm like, why the hell do you want to do that? Why don't you really want to be healthy? I mean, your goal is to be healthy. It's not to fit into some dogmatic belief. It's the opposite of veganism, where veganism, and again, veganism isn't a diet, it's an ideology. I mean, there's a plant-based diet, but a veganism is, we're not going to eat animals no matter what. And I think that's different. And I think they skew their beliefs about nutrition and health and the environment and so on and so forth, because they're bought into this ideology. Whereas I don't care what people eat. I just want people to eat what makes them healthy. Now, many people find that eating, an animal-based diet is more nutritious, better bioavailability, less gut disruption, less inflammation. That translates into health. And that's all I care about at the end of the day. All I care about is results. And that's, they'll have theories about theoretical stuff. And I'm like, well, what are your results are?
Yeah.
Your results are not, and it's not like, I think I'm going to live to 100. I mean, no one knows. I mean, these longevity experts are like, well, do my protocol, take my supplements, and we think you're going to live longer. Where's the money back guarantee on that? I mean, it's like, well, I only lived to 92. Well, you could have lived to 88. I mean, there's no way to know. I mean, and so all I say is look in the mirror today, look in the mirror tomorrow. Are you better than you were yesterday? Yeah. That's all we can realistically do. And I think people that try to make claims otherwise are up people's ass, quite honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. I really appreciate that, man. Well, shit, man, I really appreciate your time. I think that was awesome, and you got a lot of great information down there. Is there anything you want to share before we roll out of here?
I just think that, don't limit yourself. Don't let other people limit you, because a lot of people will tell you what you can achieve, what you can't achieve, what's right, what's not. I mean, don't listen to me. I like I said, I have you can listen to me what you want, but test it out. Test what I say out on yourself. If you want to try it and see what happens. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. There's people that do a carnivore diet and don't have success in there. And I say, well, why the hell are you doing the diet? If you don't get a success, do something different. Try it, test it out. Don't be afraid to change. I will tell you, your doctor is not a good source for diet advice. They're not a good source for exercise advice. Most of them are clueless. There's some that know, but I mean, most of them. So that's not where you go to get your health advice from. And, doctors are good, and this is what we have now. The medical system is now the disease management or the disease maintenance industry. Because all we're doing is maintaining these people on our disease, giving them some pills, high-priced pills that are Band-Aids for the problem. We don't really solve issues. You have to take it in. You are your biggest advocate, and don't listen to anybody else. You can listen to them, but make sure what was it? George Bush was a trust but verify guy. Maybe we trust what you say, we're going to verify. So I say verify, see if it works for you. And if it doesn't work, go do something else. You might have to adjust things. That's fine. That's what we do as a community. We're trying to help people to make adjustments as necessary. But in general, you should not feel bad. You should not be depressed. You should not be in pain. You should not hurt. You don't accept that. And, do what it takes to get better.
I love that, man. Thank you so much for that. And I definitely am on your wavelength with all that, man. So Dr. Shawn Baker, I really appreciate you taking the time. Tell everybody where they can follow you and find all your information, and I'll be sure to include that in the show notes when this episode comes out.
Yeah, so like I said, every single day at meatrx.com, I hold a video chat meeting. We have 50 to 100 people in there, and I answer questions directly every day, 7 days a week, 9 a.m. Pacific time at meatrx.com. I have a social media, several social media things. I do Instagram, what I probably do a little bit of the most. It's Shawn, SHAWN, Baker, BAKER 1967. I'm also active on Twitter at SBakerMD, and then I have a YouTube channel where I upload, videos, and it's just Shawn Baker, SHAWN BAKER again. Upload videos most days, and sometimes it's relevant stuff, sometimes it's controversial, sometimes it's just what I'm doing, food and working out wise, because people are interested in that, and so that is where I am most often and most likely to be found.
Awesome, man. Well, I encourage everybody to check you out. Thank you again for your time. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Ebb and Flow podcast. I am your host, Eben Britton. I hope you guys are doing the best to stay in the light in this insane time. Lots of love to you all. Keep spreading the positivity. We'll see you next time. Peace.